Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Interviews. Today, I am interviewing. Introduce
My name is
yourself.
Matthew. My name is Matthew. I am currently a driving instructor or driving teacher on the island of Montreal, and I used to be a trucker for a good 7 to 10 years, about doing small little things here and there.
In your experience, when you've been outside of cities even a little bit, what would you say is the oldest truck it's common to still see on the roads? So you drive by a truck, you see that it's older than the average, but it doesn't excite any surprise.
Oh, that's a good question. It's hard to say because uh, trucks
Well, maybe a
come.
better question would be if you were driving along, do you remember seeing a truck you looked at and you thought, huh, that's weird for a truck that old to still be on the road? Because it's
Not
easier to.
really,
Hmm.
because trucks, they're constantly moving. They're constantly uh, they're constantly working, and at one point, if it reaches like nearly 1 million kilometers, or I'd say about 500, about 5 to 700 miles, at that point you might need to consider replacing the truck altogether, because the repairs for said truck are just going to be astronomical, because you got to make sure everything's up to speed. The engine's going to break down a lot more. The government might be, part of my language, but might be on your ass to try and make sure that it's up to code, because at least here in Quebec, you have to get your truck inspected once every 3 months to 6 months to make sure that your vehicle is up to code. And if there's any issues on it, you have to get it repaired. Otherwise, it's not safe. So it would really depend on the vehicle. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
So, question. How easy is it, say, if you look at a truck, how easy it would tell, say, that truck's from the 1970s as opposed to from the 2010s? Would it stand
you'd be
out?
able to tell. You'd be able to tell, because it would definitely have a lot more of an older feel to it, and a lot of the technology inside the actual truck would not be the way it is today. Like, you'll see a lot more gauges, you'll see a lot more vinyl things, like stuff that you would see back in the 1970s, compared to today, where everything is pretty much all digital. Even the dashboard, the gauges are getting to the point where it's all computerized. Even the steering wheel.
Okay, just out of curiosity, what would be your thought if you saw a truck that was obviously from the mid 70s still on the road?
I'd
And
say the
not like
person who's
all fancied and gussied up like an antique either, like dirty and it's clearly been actually working.
so either the person has been taking really good care of it, making sure that everything's up to speed and doing all the repairs themselves, or the guy's a complete idiot because this guy does not care about the safety of themselves or other drivers around them.
Okay. All right. And you actually answered my next question about the gauges and technology and whatnot. Okay. Okay. All right. So tell me a bit about trucking culture. Like, so for instance, well, how long was your day?
Ah, long, really, really long.
Okay,
Um,
so I've got some weirdly specific questions. Like, what would you have for breakfast? And was your diet pretty standard among your peers?
his one was not. So when I was working, so I just want to break it down a little bit first, because this is
Okay.
a big thing. When I was working for a different company, but similar to FedEx and UPS, I was working 10 hours a day, more or less, making local deliveries. My only issue with that job was I was a spare. So they would have me either replace a route that was already, uh, that belonged to another driver, and that fluctuated my hours. I could start at 5 in the morning and I could start at 1 in the afternoon. So it kind of fluctuated my hours, making it hard for me to live my life outside of work. That was for that job. Whereas my other job, when I started working for a distributor, I was working easily 10 to 14 hours a day. And that was the worst one I had because uh, that job nearly killed me. I'm not lying when I say that. That job had me to the point where I think my liver almost failed me
Okay, so
because
nearly
all
killed you as in gener general overwork, nothing exciting nearly happened.
exactly because you asked me about my breakfast. Well, if I was lucky enough to make breakfast at home, it would usually be eggs. Uh, Actually, what I used to make back then, honestly, I can't remember, but it was something along like I'd make something at home and I would make me a lunch for the trip. But at one point, it got so hectic that truck stop sandwiches became my lunch. McDonald's became my breakfast and my supper because I had no time to do anything. I had no time to prepare for myself. I was a good day. I'd be home. I'd be working till 10 hours, and I'd be home maybe a good 4 or 5 hours. And at that point, you don't want to cook. You don't want to prepare anything. And then there's days where I would be working 12 hours, and then the next day I'd have to wake up even earlier because I have to go to Quebec City. And to avoid all the traffic in Montreal and in Quebec City, I would need to leave 2 hours earlier. So I would actually be home. I get home, I say hi to my wife, and then it's basically hi honey, good night honey, because I had to head straight to bed. I had no time to socialize. I had no time to do anything. And at this point, it's what nearly killed me. I was even drinking a liter of pop, be it diet or otherwise, a liter to 2 liters a day. I would have one energy drink a day, and that was the only way that kept me going. It nearly killed my liver, and yeah, it was incredibly stressful. I know a lot of people think driving is an easy job, and I'm not going to lie in the sense that, yeah, you're driving from point A to point B, but the, the, the toll it takes on you for the mentality of constantly having to get up, go to sleep, you barely have any time for yourself. There is no time to enjoy life. And it ends up just destroying you. Well, at least it did me, because I know some truckers love that idea of not having to worry about the fun things in life, and to them, working is fun. And I'm not chastising that; I'm just stating. But that wasn't for me. I wanted to do more with my life than be a delivery person going from point A to point B, sleeping, and then rinse and repeat the next day.
Okay. Okay, I've seen those sandwiches. I have seen those sandwiches in many a truck stop. What do they actually taste like? Because they look the same in every truck stop, no matter where I saw. So,
Well, mine were, because I can argue that this was on me, but funny enough, I trusted more the cold cut ones than I did like the egg salads or just the fruits and the lettuce and everything else first, because I just never trusted those ones because perishables. Yeah, I don't know. I just never trusted it. But how it tasted, well, think of it like tasting a bologna sandwich, and depending on how fresh it is, I think I managed to eat a couple of them that were well past their expiry date. It didn't look like it was. It didn't look like it gone bad, but as you're eating it, you could tell there was some sort of like something was about to turn, because it tasted uh, like, I don't know if you ever had like near spoiled bologna before,
yeah.
but it tasted a bit like that. And when you got nothing else better to do or better to eat, you got to shove it down, or else now you're not now you're not going to have to worry about other drivers and the safety of yourself and other drivers, but you're not going to have to worry about your hunger distracting you while you're driving.
Okay. So a specific question I have, what's it like using the shower facilities and whatnot at those truck stops?
So lucky for me, I never had to because I was doing a lot of home. I was home every night. That was the only advantage of that particular job that I did. But if I would have to guess, it'd be no different than saying taking a shower at a gym, you know?
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay. I'm taking notes as we go.
no
So,
rush.
have you ever worked in British Columbia, specifically the far western side, like the Alcan up and down that main highway that runs from Alaska down to the States?
I have not. I strictly stick to the West, Quebec, Montreal. I went to Ontario and Ottawa a couple of times, but I was strictly in the eastern part of North America.
Okay. So, another technical type question. You get up in the morning, it's -20 out. What does your startup procedure for your truck look like? Like you roll out of bed, you look at the thermometer, it's -20. What do you do from there?
Oh, I turn my truck on, and as the truck is running, I put the idle on to make sure it doesn't cut the engine, and then I start my inspection. I check everything to make sure everything is up and running, and by the time I do it, because it usually takes anywhere from 10 minutes to a half hour, depending on what we find and what we see. By the time that happens, the engine's all warmed up. Everything is all taken care of. The cabin is moderately warm. You don't have to worry about your engine stalling or your pipes breaking because of frozen oil or coolant.
Okay, well, what's on the floorboard of most cabs these days? Is it like that fake carpet you get in cars, or just bare metal, or what?
So I think it depends if it's a day cab versus a sleeper. A sleeper might be a bit like a fake carpet for the apartment place to make sure that it's nice and comfortable. As for the front, it's no different than a car. It's no different than a car or a truck. It's going to be plastic. It's going to be a bit carpety, depending on what make you buy. Like I know for me, I think the day cab I had was everything was pretty much plastic. It's easy to clean. You don't have to worry about stains or crumbs in the carpet.
Okay. All right. What was I going to say? Okay. Are there any special myths in the Canadian trucker subculture? Like
So,
in the States, Route 66 is supposed to be especially haunted. But
oh, yeah.
can you tell me about
Well,
that?
unfortunately, I cannot. I was never really sociable with other truck drivers because I really didn't spend much time in that type of trucking world. So I never got to hear any stories about certain parts of uh, certain parts of the highways, if it's a dead zone or not, or if it's haunted or not. So for me, I can't really say, unfortunately. The only one I could
Okay.
argue about was I think there was this road in Alberta, which they call it the Death Road because a family of six ended up losing their life on a highway that's going in the same direction. You know those one lane highway each.
Mm-hmm.
They call that one the Death Road because a family died there, colliding into oncoming traffic. That's the only one I could think of.
So general spooky stuff. I had something happen. We were out. I was working for the National Park Service. We were out back of nowhere, barely deserved the name of road. We got started talking about aliens and ghosts and whatnot, and our lights just suddenly died for no reason. It was really weird. It was spooky. We had our crack driver. She was from Michigan. Kept the car stable. fiddled with the control till the lights came back on, and we changed the subject and laughed awkwardly and went on with our night. Have you ever had anything weird or inexplicable happen to you while you were driving? Or
Oh,
something that you found out had an explanation later, like a flaw that the company discovered 2 years later, but was at the time was really spooky.
that's hard to say. Uh, my gut tells me there was some experiences that happened to me, but my memory of that particular time was just so awful that I've completely forgotten about it. The only thing I can remember for certain that I found very uh, intriguing and very awesome was I happened to see two wolves while I was driving on my trip. One was on my way back late at night. Uh, could I argue it was a spirit wolf? Honestly, it might have been. It seemed a bit gray, so it's hard to say if it wasn't like a gray wolf or maybe I saw a spirit wolf. It's hard to say. This other one though, I saw for sure, guaranteed. Funny enough, I was almost the foolish human that went out and helped it because it was limping. I couldn't help myself being the nice guy. I'm like, oh, you're hurt. I want to help you, take you to a vet. But then my part of me is like, yeah, no, two things. A, the animal's wounded. It might be scared and it will attack you because it's thinking that you're going to attack it that now that it's wounded. Or option B is this wolf's a lot smarter than it looks, and he's actually trying to hunt for the kind human that's like, oh, please help me. I'm hurt. I'm hurt. Hey, you're a sucker. Good. Get him, boys. You know, animals are a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for. So please, folks, be careful about wildlife. Do not underestimate them under any circumstances.
On that note, do you have any good moose stories?
Uh,
Have you ever had some idiot bull try to challenge your truck in the middle of rut season or anything like that?
well, it wasn't so much in a truck as it was a car. I was driving the highway late one night. Uh, a family of mooses and deers crossed over the highway, and what ended up happening was I was able to stop them, but it was a light drizzle, so I had my windshield wipers on, and you know how it makes that little squeaky sound sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, it went off one time. A moose starts looking at me, thinking that thinking I'm like trying to do something to him. I'm like, no, 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 not me. It starts looking back again, like to follow the herd, where the windshield wipers go off again, making that squeaky sound. Looks at me. I'm like, oh no, wait, I know what it is. Turn off my windshield wipers. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not trying to cause any trouble, buddy. I do not want to fuck with you. You would crush me. No two ways about it. Uh, so luckily they moved on, and I continued on the road. An interesting experience.
Okay, so which is weirder from a just sort of a vibe perspective? Getting up in the really early hours in the summer when it's light out. That I don't know if you've driven north of the Arctic Circle, but uh, being in that say Anchorage or Fairbanks summer twilight, or driving during the day in quotation marks when it in the middle of winter when it's super dark out. Which of those gives the weirdest, or could you just contrast those vibes for me?
Okay. For me, the weirdest time to drive is between uh actually I'd say October and December. Because I don't know what it is about that particular month, but it's something it feels darker than normal to me. It's such like a unique darkness that I feel like we need to be extra careful. Like now that the at least here in Canada where I am, the sun's coming up a bit more. Even nighttime doesn't feel as threatening as it did during that particular time. When the sun's setting and it's like nearly 4:30 and it's already night out. It's that particular moment that I find the most freakiest of all time to drive, yet I enjoy it. Don't know why. I really enjoy driving during that period at night.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up here pretty quick. I got to get to my next class. I really, really enjoyed this. So, is there something, one thing, or a concept that you think that people don't understand about trucking?
That it's the backbone of our society. It really is. People do not understand. Without us, you would not have what you have. Like, there is not one thing you can mention that I could say a truck has taken it. Doesn't matter. Like oxygen. There's oxygen tanks. Trucks transport it. Houses. If you have the money for it, you can ship a mansion on a truck. There's nothing that is not done without a truck, and people tend to forget about it. They take advantage, and they forget the privilege they have of, like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm gonna go to the corner store and buy me some pizza. Oh, here it is. Without us, there'd be no pizza. Without us, there would be no food. Granted, barring no farmers, etc. But without us transporting the food from the farmers to the grocery stores, you wouldn't have it. And
Yeah,
a
and
lot of people, sorry,
300 years ago, only 300 years ago, it was very common for one village to be starving while another had plenty because there was just no way to get the food over the mountain. And
exactly. And now we have that technology, and people are turning a blind eye to the point now where truckers are being exploited by the corporations, by their bosses, because no one wants to do this thankless job anymore. You're overworked, you're grossly underpaid for the work, for the sacrifice that you're doing for your life, and you're like, and everyone's like, they'll be fine. That's my interpretation of it, anyway.
okay, well, thank you very much, Matthew. This has been really, really great. And this is really going to help me with my writing project. So, do you have generally when I involve a creator, I say plug your plugs. Do you have a business you want to promote?
As of right now, I do not. If ever I do start with a business, or if I do start my own personal venture, which honestly I might, would you mind if I share it down the line with you, Betty?
Absolutely. Get in contact with me. I'll come up and interview you again. Gladly. You're a very good interviewee. Guest. Guest. That's the word. And just kind of wrap it up, what was it? I'm doing this for my Dying Embers universe. The actually secondary characters in the book are these two truckers that are heavily involved. And one of them is a regular human, and one of them is a feral tentacle monster that lives in the engine of his truck. That's why I had all the questions about older engines, because he doesn't like switching out his body too often, because he has to extend his nerves systems throughout the rest of the truck, and it's a painful process to rip him out and put him in a new one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would
Okay.
agree with that. Yeah.
All right. So thank you for coming, and we'll call that a day.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.